the 14th September 2021 on Dana Durnford. I hope everybody's doing good tonight. And this Tuesday night, you can call in at 709-589-4406, 709-589-4406, and talk your heart out. We got a bizarre story today. J. Robert Oppenheimer. Let's play a clip of his infamous...
He knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." We all thought that, one way or another.
Yeah, I suppose we all felt that way one or another. That's right, if you were involved in this industry. So, this story here, protester ex-candidate, political candidate, to plead guilty to seeking nuclear material, but he would not get prison. That seems kind of strange, don't it? He was going to use it, he said, to commit suicide, and because the government is the only person that can get their hands on the material he was trying to get, then population would assume the government killed him, which is not really what happened. But he wouldn't get prison, though, under a deal because Congress lacks the authority to criminalize poisoning with radioactive substances. Because if it was a crime, nuclear power plants couldn't exist. Fukushima nuclear disaster is linked to its first case of throat cancer. Lunatics, eh? They're literally lunatics. Japanese National Cancer Center says the number of patients accelerated by an extra 865,000 in 2012, the year after. So there was 865,000 extra cancers. Well, then how is it that this is the first case of throat cancer? You'll understand it if you hang around. It's the duty of the scientific community to reduce the public's fear and anxiety about genocide, ecocide, and omnicide from the nuclear industry. The thing with that statement is the duty of the scientific community to tell you lies. So you're sleepwalking in the hell for your loved ones. Radiation forecasts in Japan kept secret to avoid panic in the whole of society. Because they would have panicked. Japan would be empty right now if the truth came out. Japan's official says delay in raising Fukushima to a level 7 was because we could have triggered a panic. we Japan's officials are people like me and you, except they couldn't get a real job, so they took a job where their job is to murder you. And you don't want to hold them accountable? Radiation forecast withheld by the government, which is people like me or you. And they decided they couldn't have a pension if they told you the truth. Releasing it would cause unnecessary panic. Unnecessary. They're not even experts. Ministry decided such data would be unavailable because they would have no power anymore. And so I think it's the duty of Japan to throttle them. Like you need 1,000 people in Japan, chase them down with a knife and finish them. Ultimate Insider, Prime Minister contemplating evacuating 30 million people. Contemplated. Evacuating 30 million people. But he didn't because he was worried about the nuclear industry. And said Eastern Japan might collapse. It did, but they decided to murder the rest of the planet at the same time. Radiation forecast can by no means be released to the public, decided the government. For people like me and you who couldn't get a real job, and they decided to get a job where they would wreck the population, and themselves and their loved ones too. Showed radioactive cloud could spread over Tokyo. Of course it did. But the biggest betrayal is 85,000 children were given dosimeters rather than evacuate them. And dosimeters that they can't read, and shipped to American and British universities to study the victims. It's hard to imagine something more frightening than 5-year-olds marching off to radiated school playgrounds with Geiger counters. And I think it's more frightening than that is the fact that they didn't evacuate the children. And that there's a whole industry of these people in the nuclear. They got educations and degrees, many specialty bachelor of sciences and everything else, in order to tell you lies. Those jobs actually exist. It works this way. 4 scientific journals accept fake study about Star Wars. 4 journals accepted a fake study. Journal got dubbed into publishing a fake Star Wars study. It never got dubbed. That's what they do for a living. Information overload fuels fake news study. A major publisher retracted more than 100 studies from the Cancer Journal over fake peer reviews. So this story we're going to cover in a bit should be 101. See? Retraction note to multiple articles in tumor biology. Phony peer review. The more we look, the more we find. Fake peer reviews hit the RSC journals. Paging Dr. Fraud. The fake publishers that are ruining science. And China cracks down on fake peer reviews. And hacking the scientific publication process. Peer review fraud. Which is what this study about is here. Did you know they couldn't go into the control room in Fukushima for 7 years? But they were able to get on top of the reactors and remove fuel from the fuel pool that didn't even exist. Try wrapping your mind around it. We need a night of the long knives, a month of the long knives for the nuclear industry. Everything in the nuclear industry should be exterminated because they're completely rotten. They're completely hideous. They're completely monsters. They're completely out of control. They're a threat to the entire future of humanity just by hiding the science of radiation. They have now jeopardized all species. So it's not just scientists. Look at what media has perpetrated. Here's media pretending they're 100 feet above the building to your left.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011, leading to the country's worst nuclear disaster.
Yeah. So she's faking being in a building that don't exist. And Cecilia Vega done that also. She just got a job at the White House press room from ABC in Australia. Norm MacDonald just died from cancer he had for 10 years, which is when Fukushima happened, of course. Okay, so Fukushima nuclear disaster linked to his first case of throat cancer. 865,000 other cancers, extra cancers in 2012, by the way. By Tom Howell. I'll show you him coming up. At least 2 cases of throat cancer have been directly linked to the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster. Disaster? That's what you're going to call a catastrophic event like that? That it hit the coast of Japan 10 years ago. Hit the coast. Japan's Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare, who has no attributes of a human, by the way, has recognized the Fukushima nuclear disaster played a direct role in 2 men developing cancers. One of the men, who was in his 40s, died after developing the illness, Japan's spineless, soulless media reported. And the 2 men worked on the cleanup efforts following the Fukushima Daiichi. Cleanup efforts. You'll be there for the next 10,000 years. I fell ill in 2018. And a panel of experts that don't have no name or faces, of course, ruled the workers have been exposed to significantly more than a safe level of millisieverts. Like if you work at, you're not really working there. If you're sentenced to death and you end up at Fukushima Daiichi multiple nuclear meltdown site, millisieverts is not worried about it. The whole place is full of sieverts, lethal doses by the liter of waters. The pair have been exposed to approximately 85 and 44 millisieverts. Like if they told me that to my face, I would punch their head so hard I'd punch a hole right through it. For context, the average annual exposure in the US is 6.2 millisieverts. You can't conflate natural emitters with man-made anthropogenic emitters. You despicable scum. You coward. You piece of shit. You disgusting parasite. And so it's a fable that you get 6.2 millisieverts, by the way. You're worried, what they're talking about is so-called natural emitters that are stardust. It's what Earth is. Every species on Earth is already acclimated to that stardust through genetic superior selection. You're not getting a dose. That is life itself. That is the rule of life, right? It's got nothing to do with man-made stuff. And so people that do that are particularly hideous people. They should go to jail for 100 years just for doing that. And the annual exposure limit for nuclear industry employees in the UK is 20 millisieverts, but that's man-made stuff. And if there's going to be high doses at the plant, they'll bring in transient workers, daytime workers that they don't have healthcare or unions or anything else. It's the first time cancer has been recognized as an occupational accident from Fukushima. So it tells you that the whole science thing is broken beyond repair. Everybody that has denied that this has happened for 10 years should be beaten unconscious, at least, if not to death, with baseball bats. However, other cancer cases have been linked to the nuclear disaster. At least 6 other Fukushima workers developed leukemia, thyroid, lung cancers. But there's 1,800 illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries that you get for cancer, from not just cancer. Cancer is latent, usually the last one to show up. There's heart problems, liver problems, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome, schizophrenia. There's 1,800 illnesses that can kill you before cancer manifests. The whole entire academic industry is nothing but goblins, nothing but morons and lapdogs for a genocide machine, ecocide machine. Nothing but idiot machines. Literally nothing but idiots are allowed to work in that industry. Nothing but morons. How can we have a future with and nothing but morons in key positions? In 2011, 3 reactors, it's actually 4 reactor buildings melted down and their fuel pools. Rewriting history. 3 reactors at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant in northeastern Japan suffered catastrophic meltdowns. What became the most severe nuclear disaster since Chernobyl. Chernobyl was a 200-ton reactor. It was a brand new building. It was mostly graphite, not uranium and plutonium. Fukushima reactors are 800 tons. They're pure uranium, pure plutonium. And that reactor 3 was the mixed oxide fuel, MOX fuel, which was reclaimed hot particles from nuclear missiles and nuclear fuel, which means it's 2 billion times at least worse than the other reactors that melted down. And due to the harmful radioactive isotopes that were spewed into the surrounding environment, really? I can't believe they actually said that. Nearly 160,000 residents were evacuated promptly. The majority of them weren't evacuated for 3 months. Not only that, there was 460,000 evacuated. And the Japanese authority implemented a 30-kilometer exclusion zone around the plant a month later, long after everybody was completely contaminated. And a report from earlier this year argued that these measures managed to save the public from a significant amount of radiation, and that their radiation doses were actually lower than first suspected. Whoever wrote this article should have their head pulled off and shoved up their ass. This is a plume model covering northern hemisphere. You despicable shit for brain industry. You murderous, stupid, idiot industry. You piece of shit industry. You just nothing but cowards. The nuclear industry is the weirdest I've ever come across. It's 1,000% cowards. Each coward is just out trying to outdo the next coward. As such, the concluded disaster was unlikely to significantly raise cancer rates. There's 865,000 extra cancers in 2012. Back in 2016, scientists at the University of Fukushima began screening local children for early signs of thyroid cancer and found a staggering uptick in cancer rates. Understandably, this caused some concern, but it was later concluded this was not the result of radiation exposure. Was not concluded that it was not the result. This was Geraldine Thomas from the United Kingdom done that. Pre-Fukushima, it was 1 to 2 million children would have thyroid cancers because they got 54 nuclear plants, right? After Fukushima in 2012, it was 13,646 out of 40,000. So 13,646 out of a million would be catastrophic. 13,646 out of 40,000 is unconscionable. That's 360,000 of a million. So it was really interesting when he said it was later concluded it was not the result of radiation exposure, but they don't tell you what it was the result of. They don't deny that happened. They just deny that it was from Fukushima nuclear meltdowns. That's not an industry. That's a secret society and a death cult that we got to deal with. It's our obligation. This is our watch, not the next generation or the next generation. This is our watch. What's the point of having a planet with a genocide machine running loose on it? An omnicide, wiping out all species. What's the point of that? If you're not going to try to hold them accountable. Lord knows I do. Data showed a large spike in deaths, particularly infants, in the 14 weeks following Fukushima. Deaths. Oh, they don't count then. They didn't get cancer. Fukushima nuclear disaster linked to his first case of throat cancer. By Tom Hale. That's him there. I'd punch a hole right through his head. I'd literally punch a hole right through his head if I ever caught him. I'd rip every limb off his body and I'd beat him unconscious with it. Tom is a journalist. Come on. Tom is an idiot machine, a useful idiot based in London, a moron, a scumbag with a master's degree in journalism, and he can't get a job to tell the truth. All he can get a job is that murders everybody. With an especially keen interest in the perils of climate change. His work seen on report from South Korea at the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is a corporation, by the way. They have no sovereignty in any country. Radiation health specialists, children with 11 becquerels a kilogram of cesium start to see heart problems. And when you think about how the radioactive cesium was reported in the Kellogg cereal in Japan at 20 becquerels a kilogram, then that becomes important, don't it? Or that the government is going to drastically reduce radiation in food by April of 2012 to 100 becquerels a kilogram, when it was set at 500 becquerels a kilogram. But it's worse than that. They didn't check it. They gave the farmers garbage Geiger counters that can only look for gamma and didn't actually even do that, and told the farmers to check the food for gamma, and if it's over 500 becquerels, don't ship it to the market. What a coward society we live in. We don't even live anymore. This is where some bizarre freak show we were involved in called Earth. Look, in 2019, a study came out showing congenital heart disease operations on neonates and infants rose by 14% per 100,000, which meant that 14,000 is actually 14.2%. 14,200 children out of 100 have to have open heart surgery or they'll die. It's not cancer, Dana, so don't count. Come say that to my face. See how that works out for you. A dentist won't be able to help you. Newborn heart problems surged after Fukushima. They've seen the same thing after Chernobyl, by the way. So let's talk about other cancers, because cancer is just one of 1,800 illnesses. Just because you're not finding a lot of cancer, apparently. Cancer plagues the West Valley nuke workers. Cancer plagues West Valley, United States nuke workers. They gave out $20 million for cancer, but nobody had a nuclear meltdown got cancer, Dana. Shutdown of Iowa's only nuclear power plant will mean less cancer. Without a meltdown, if you shut down a plant, there's less cancer. Once again, you only see them talking about cancer. They don't want to acknowledge there's other diseases and illnesses and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries. Study shows drop in cancer incidences after closure of a Sacramento reactor. May warrant a full review of low-level radiation risk. And another thing they noticed was that there was a big decrease in infant mortality after they closed nuclear power plants anywhere. Scientists are concerned with radioactive fallout from America's nuclear plants. For decades, the U.S. government has compensated employees who got cancer from working inside the plants that made the nuclear weapons. But a growing number of scientists say this radioactive threat may not stop at defense. Zach Farmer, an all-star baseball player, grew up near the plant, was only 21 when he died of leukemia. Kate Smith had lived near the plant. She too was just 15 when she died from another rare cancer. And local health commissioner Matt Brewster is convinced that people are living and dying from radioactive fallout. 4 miles from the plant, a middle school was closed in 2019 after enriched uranium was discovered inside the school. We covered that story and their lies from the Department of Energy. It was revolting. Well, why would you take a job like that? Why not get a real job? Why take that job? What's the disconnect? How does that work? Is that fun or something, lying to everybody? Is that now new, trendy, and cool? Like, there's really something wrong with you. If you're taking a job where your job is to go out and trick the population to become complacent, there's something wrong with that equation. But when you say that that person should be beaten unconscious with baseball bats, you're actually a normal person. That's a normal response. I'm not saying go do it. I'm saying it's a normal response. I think the police should do it because legally I'm not allowed to do it. For some bizarre reason, if I murder them, I get in trouble. If they murder me, they get a promotion and a raise. And that is not acceptable, ever, under any circumstances. No matter how stupid you are, it's still not acceptable. Why not get a real job where you're not murdering people? Is that stupid? Is that retarded or something? The U.S. Department of Energy, which doesn't even exist, it's actually the nuclear industry, which oversees nuclear and others like it, tell us there is no radioactivity detected above natural occurring level. Imagine you got that job. No, there's nothing there above natural level. And you go home and tell your kids a bedtime story. Like you're a good person or something. Like you have some redeeming qualities. Dr. David Manuta, the former chief scientist at the plant, disagrees. He says, we're doing damage that cannot ever be repaired. There are approximately 300 uranium plutonium processing sites across America. That should terrify you because they're all hemorrhaging radiation. So you got 100 nuclear plants across America with fuel pools. You got hundreds of nuclear waste sites. You got over 100 Superfund sites from nuclear industry. You got 300 uranium plutonium processing sites. All of them are hemorrhaging radiation. All of them. You can't contain it. You have to vent it all. And that's genocide. Literally the stupidest thing imaginable is what they're doing. You can't make it up but why are they so fucking evil is the question. Excuse the reality. Why are they so evil? Why are they such degenerates? Why are they such fucking weirdos? How does that actually work? Oh, Dana, you're swearing. They're murdering everybody. See, that's the brainwash. When people say, oh, Dana's swearing, and you're not, something wrong with your fucking head. Guest article, do emissions from nuclear power plants cause cancer? This year, cancer deaths is expected to exceed 60,000 in California. A lot more than that because of all the forest fires liberating decades of radiation into the environment. And 600,000 nationwide. Radioactive discharges from nuclear power plants are viewed by many as a contributing factor and over 100 million Americans live within 50 miles of a disease factory known as a nuclear power plant. Air ejectors. Nuclear power plants have this thing called air ejectors. So they have these big stacks, and then they have these big fans that shove air up them at very high speeds. Air ejectors blast dozens of radionuclides into the prevailing winds, which generally blow over the populated cities of Orange County in particular, the time right there. But all plants are doing it. And if you look at it, all plants are surrounded by farms, as far as you can see. So the farms suck up a lot of that radiation so they can poison you, see? It's a murder industry. Unfortunately for us, the radioactivity is a protected pollutant. It's a protected pollutant. And while the Nuclear Regulatory Commission says radioactive waste is permissible, it is careful not to say that it is safe. And permissible levels are based on a healthy, young adult male. Even though it's known and well known that women and children are much more vulnerable to the damaging effects on cell and DNA and chromosomes, the human fetus is 50 times more vulnerable. This is also applicable to animals and insects and birds and mammals too, not just humans. It gets worse. These releases have been conducted in secret with no advance public warning. Instead, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission buries the data deep in its records the following year. With a lot of digging, you can find quarterly averages, but you can never find the date or concentration of any particular release. That is incredibly sinister. That is insidiously sinister. Recently, these policy changed when Southern California Edison quietly agreed to disclose releases 48 hours in advance. Many were alarmed to learn of a planned release 2 days before the Memorial Day holiday weekend. God forbid that anyone went near the ocean over the weekend. Appeals were made to postpone the releases, but a corporation refused. Do these emissions increase cancer risk? Of course they do. The shocking answer is no one knows for sure. No, it's not. Everybody, the evidence is overwhelming, mainly because of lack of research. And nuclear, by the way, is the most studied thing on the entire planet. And the public would like to know more about the nuclear industry, wants to know less. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which was captured a long time ago and created by the industry anyway, likes to cite a heavily flawed study from 30 years ago which failed to find an answer. It's studied only when people dies, not where they lived or worked. It also failed to study cancer in children, the most vulnerable group. And more recently, scientific study in Europe have reported an increase in cancer risk, especially in children. And in response to pressure for new research, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, I'm just trying to make fun of them, spent 5 years issuing 2 reports which studied whether to study the problem. Wrap your mind around it. Spent 5 years issuing 2 reports which studied whether they should study whether radiation was a problem. Right, so right there, that's reason enough that they should be sent to jail for life. Another report provided a research proposal which singled out San Onofre and 5 other nuclear plants for study. It would examine the cancer registries of everyone living within 50 kilometers of San Onofre. But once again, cancer is not the only thing. Heart problems, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome. 1,800 illnesses you got to study. You can't just study cancer. The Nuclear Scum Degenerate Regulatory Commission sat on the proposal for 10 months and then terminated the entire project just as it was about to begin. They're not a regulatory, they're a public relation firm that hates us. They actually hate us. And they hate all the species. And they hate children with a passion. San Onofre is now closed, but 1,773 tons of fuel, plutonium, uranium will remain in the backyards for an indefinite future. That's actually still splitting the atom, and it will be for another 100,000 years. That drifts into your community, but it also drifts into all the farms, because all nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms. Let me give you a quick depiction, because it'll blow you away if you've never seen this before. I'll pick out 15 for you. Okay, so think about this. I'll put it on the big screen. Why are nuclear power plants built in farm communities, and why they are surrounded by farms? Because the radiation lands. Look in the background. See all the farms? Do you think that's an accident that almost every single nuclear power plant is surrounded by farms? Look at it. And you can go way back 50 years, you'll see the same thing. That's truly one of the most terrifying images you can ever find, is nuclear power plants surrounded by farms. And the reason I say that it's one of the most terrifying things imaginable is because there actually is an overwhelming amount of academic studies that show that they know the farms are going to suck up the radiation. There's no way they don't know what I'm showing you, because that's their studies. It sucks up radiation. They know this. The food, but any forest will suck up radiation, but farms is getting distributed out to the population. Why would you do that? So why would you have nuclear power plants with a community and farms? What's the point of that? Even the future nuclear power plants surrounded by farms. Like, that is the most terrifying image in history, is the fact that they're building a new nuclear power plant in the United Kingdom, right? And so the first picture is this one here. And then they have a 3D picture, is that one there. That's a future looking nuclear power plant they're going to build in the United Kingdom, surrounded by farms as far as you can see, in every direction. That's a genocide. How can you deny what I'm showing you? And is that acceptable? And why do people work in the industry that's doing that? Why are they so dark? Why are they so evil? Why did they gravitate to that particular line of work? Cleaning Fukushima Daiichi, the unskilled and the destitute. At a work, nowhere to live, nowhere to go, nothing to eat. Come to Fukushima, we'll kill you. Try making that up on your own, look. They're not looking for Harvard or Yale or Stanford or Oxford or MIT students or faculty or alumni or academics. They want the homeless and the destitute, out of work, nowhere to live, nowhere to go. People think scientists are working at Fukushima are well-disciplined idiots. Western governors want nuclear testing compensation expanded. These are just from bombs. And it's so bad that they want to include all of Nevada, every human in Nevada, every human in Arizona, every human in Utah, every human in Colorado, every human in Idaho, every human in Montana, every human in New Mexico, and every human in the island territory of Guam. They want to give them $150,000 each for being poisoned. Nuclear lab employees with radiation-linked cancers have been forced to wait years for potential benefits. At the Los Alamos National Laboratory, which is built in one of the biggest clean water aquifers in the country, by the way. That's no longer clean. At Los Alamos alone, at least 967 people who began work in the lab since 1996 have applied individually and been denied compensation for cancer. 800 other people, though, have been approved for disability from cancers. At one laboratory. So carbon-free makes me want to cry. And countless others may be sick but haven't applied. Airborne radiation near Fukushima nuke plant still far higher than the government's artificially inflated max. That should terrify you. 2018 is still hemorrhaging editor. Construction workers employed at Department of Energy nuke site at higher risk of cancers. Japan raises Fukushima crisis level April the 12th, 2011. Chernobyl was a single reactor. And Fukushima reactors are way more destroyed and way bigger. They were the biggest in the world at the time. But they waited until April the 12th, 3 weeks, before they called it a level 7. Level 7 meant they had to evacuate further out. But also we know that those areas were well contaminated at that stage. Official says the radiation leaks were still far lower than experienced during Chernobyl, and they call it the world's worst. And people who say that, of course, should have a baseball bat rammed up their Every organism in Fukushima prefecture is contaminated with radiation. 1.4 million becquerels per kilogram in the worm's excrement, 60 kilometers from a nuclear meltdown. If you're eating food from there, you will get sick. For sure. Not maybe, not almost, but you will get sick. Columbia medical professor, inhaling just one radioactive hot particle can cause a cancer. That's bad news. That's not just humans, by the way, that's all species. It's bad news because that's the Pacific Ocean over there, and this is the Atlantic. So that's really bad news. That's terrible news, that's what that is. Right, and again, you can see the entire northern hemisphere. This is the Atlantic, that's the Pacific, that's America. That red over there is Japan, a continuous plume, like an invisible snowstorm covering a snowstorm. Imagine a snowstorm. The entire northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere having a snowstorm at the same time that goes on for 10 years. Then you kind of appreciate why I do what I'm doing. And you can appreciate when I do the research and it says, well, I never found no spiders in the woods. The ants are gone. There was no fish jumping in the ponds. There were no birds flying in the sky. That actually means something. It's not acceptable. What's the point of this? What's the point of pretending it's not happening? You think it's going to fix itself? Are you really that stupid? Is iodine-131 killing babies in Philadelphia? No, that was curium fission products, because that's the biggest byproduct of radiated fuel rod. Iodine-131 is used to manipulate you and deceive you. 10 billion times normal levels. Normal being radiation left over from nuclear testing. The atoms are floating around, pulsing energy every second. Like my Geiger counter. These are absurd numbers up there, by the way. But see, my Geiger counter is not going to pick up the isotopes they're talking about. Very high concentrations recorded at all monitoring posts in the Northern Hemisphere. Fukushima is the most serious man-made disaster in human history. Obesity rates now nearly double Japan's average, America's average, Canadian average, Europe's average. An excessive weight gain after a nuclear event is a marker of radiation poisoning and brain damage. UVA professor convicted of assault and battery. So how many professors are there like in North America? There's not actually a lot, see? When you compare it to other jobs, right? So left-wing professor, left-wing. You like that, don't you? Convicted of raping a 13-month-old baby. How does a professor think it's a good idea to rape a 13-month-old baby, I wonder? Or that's just a symptom of our universities. Professor convicted of falsifying retirement assets. U of M professor convicted of attempted theft by swindle. Judge rules ex-UOG professor convicted of sex crimes can go to Hong Kong for work at a university. Ex-Ivy League professor convicted in his wife's death is free. He bludgeoned his wife to death in their home. And he's an economic professor. OC professor convicted of exposing himself to multiple women. Professor convicted of poisoning his wife. Oh, and professor and the wife convicted of fraud and $700,000 NASA contract. Retired University of Tennessee professor convicted of arms export violations. Medical school professor convicted of abuse. A Harvard medical school psychiatrist accused of sexual abuse of his students. For grades, right? Professor convicted in child porn case. Indian American professor convicted of defrauding the students. MIT professor convicted of staging his own shooting. Harvard professor convicted of stealing $600,000 from a Hong Kong jewelry magnate. Former Florida State professor convicted of embezzlement. UC River professor convicted of torturing his wife. Singapore law professor convicted of sex for grades graft. Ex-Virginia Tech professor convicted in grant fraud cases. College professor convicted of defrauding National Science Foundation. KSU professor convicted of first-degree murder. Kansas State University professor. Professor convicted of faking vandalism. Jewish professor convicted of marketing child porn. Professor convicted of scrawling polite graffiti, scrawling into people's vehicles with a screwdriver. Former professor convicted on child pornography. Well, he was a professor, but then they fired him when he got charged. Hong Kong professor convicted in the yoga ball murders, where he put cyanide in the yoga ball, cut a hole in it, put it in his wife's car so when she drove the yoga classes, it would kill her before she got to class. And it did. Convicted former professor admits to abusing boys. Pittsburgh professor convicted in wife cyanide killing. Former MIT professor convicted of staging shooting is accused of forging parts of dead son's will. Former Oakland University professor found guilty of running a drug house. Maryland professor convicted of defrauding NSF and his students. A former UCI professor convicted of setting fires. Stanford professor convicted of tax evasion and theft. K-State professor convicted of murder. Business professor convicted of tax fraud. Former professor convicted of hiring a hitman to murder his daughter-in-law. Unbelievable. Professor convicted of murdering his wife, ex-wife. Convicted of assaulting 3 girls, another professor. Harvard professor convicted of defrauding couple. I'm like, I can't sit here and show it all to you because the whole show would be nothing but that. So, and you only catch a 20% of criminals, right? So you can imagine almost all professors are actually criminals. And I can actually back that up with studies showing them lying in their studies. Convicted of child porn. An early childhood professor. Board of Education president. Juvenile court volunteer. Still lives within 1,000 feet of a junior high school. Convicted of child porn. He didn't become an early childhood professor or a Board of Education's president and juvenile court volunteer because he's a good person. He wanted access to victims. Morgan, professor convicted of grant frauds. NUS law assistant professor convicted of assaulting a 70-year-old tax driver. Imagine beating up a 70-year-old man, for God's sakes. And you're a professor. Another Oklahoma State University professor convicted of 26 fraud and public corruption charges involving young boys. Like sexually assaulting young boys. University of Michigan opera professor charged with sexual assault in Texas. Marietta professor charged with a slew of child porn charges. MTSU nursing professor convicted of bank and wire fraud. Liberty University professor charged with attempted murder of his wife. South Korea professor convicted of faking a Yale degree. Former CSU East Bay professor convicted of baby sex abuse. My God, boy. Go out and get a prostitute, for goodness sakes. Former professor of ESI hospital convicted in bribery case. So what you're seeing, though, is just, how can you admire a professor after you see something like that? There's probably a handful of good ones out there, but they remain silent. I'll just get up and go to work every day and go home, kiss the wife, and groom the dog, and keep my nose clean. Yeah, well, your fellow comrades are out there molesting and raping and murdering everything they get their hands on. Silence is a crime to remain silent. It really is. In fact, under the Magna Cartas for United Kingdom, or the Constitution for America, or the Bill of Rights here in Canada, which are the doctrines for most countries, you are obligated, it's your obligation to hold these people accountable, to hold the industry and the nuclear industry, for instance, stuff like that, accountable. You are obligated. You are actually obligated. And if not you, then who? And let me see what we got for you here. We raised $83 last night from James M. in the comments section. I noticed it right now. Thank you, James. I guess it's okay to use your last name because you got it on your video. James Mangan, and we appreciate that. I shot a couple of pictures and videos today. And I spent $450 today. Almost $600 on Friday, or Saturday rather. Then I spent another $80 a day. So it's the 14th. That's me this afternoon, a few hours ago. September. And the quarter inch was no good, so I had to get the 3/8. So I got 15 right now because that's all I can afford. And we got the steaks. That was $100. We'll go into the legs. I got them drilled out of each one. And it's 5 o'clock on Tuesday the 14th. Let's see what I can get done before dark, I suppose. I still got to level everything out, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. The good old blah, blah, blahs. And so I spent, $544 a day just on the plywood. Because you can see it up there, 15 sheets at $31.59 a sheet plus taxes. Taxes was $71. Scumbags, eh? And then I spent $80 on C-clamps. And so they go around the tube from the outside and then you lock on the plywood from the inside. The idea of that is so nobody can steal everything from me, right? And so it was $544 for the plywood, plus $80 is $620. $80 worth of C-clamps. That's only 40 C-clamps, $1.95 each, right? And then $100 for the steaks, and then $575 for I can't remember the name of it now, but for the 12 by 20 garage in a box. What am I supposed to do? If I rent a place, you're looking at close to $200 a month, and it's not going to be able to store everything. And so this will pay for itself in less than 6 months, right? And I can take it apart and move it somewhere else. I'm heartbroken anyway. But we raised $83 last night. We spent $1,200, $1,300, and we raised $83. Nuclear industry must be laughing their guts out at me. They already got me wrecked, they know it. And they're just going to murder the whole population. They couldn't care less. But anyway, I got, that's 2 full days, or not 2 full days, almost 3 full days trying to build something by myself that I shouldn't be trying to do, right? So tomorrow I'm going to hang the plywood on it. And I only got 15 sheets. I need 20 sheets, right? And so the Marante 1/4 inch is real flimsy. It's cheaper though, right? But it's not applicable for what I'm trying to do. But I was thinking this afternoon, the Marante boards, which is like plywood, except it's so thin, you can't really use it for many applications. I was thinking about using that for the roof because it's very bendable, right, without cracking. And I might go and pick up 5 sheets of that tomorrow. Another $125 worth. And my legs, my front of my legs, man, burning and sore. And I'm used to doing this kind of work. I'm not healthy enough to do this kind of work, see? But we got to get it done. We're running out of time, and I can't just sit there and do nothing. We got to get it done. Otherwise, it's going to be a big pile in the garden with a tarp over it, and that'll all get stolen in no time, right? And winter's coming. And if you remember, two winters ago, we had 18 feet of snow. 18 feet of snow. But the snow plowing is taking care of my site, and they got a tractor, so they'll come down and dig it out if they got to, right? And we had a thumbs down before the show even started, because you're not even allowed to have a conversation. You're not allowed to have an honest conversation, right? Nobody's allowed to have an honest conversation. You're only allowed to have a fabrication. You're only allowed to tell lies. You're not allowed to be actual honest. And if you don't understand how dangerous this radioactive fallout is, you need to watch the show I done last night about the die-offs, whales, manatee, and coral extinction and everything else, to try to wrap your mind around it a bit. Yeah, hinges and latches and padlocks. I got to get all that yet. Yeah, good. Thanks for reminding me. I'll be bankrupt before long at this rate anyway. It's all good, right? Who cares? Look, here's how I see things. I don't got a right to stop. I got no intentions of ever stopping anyway. I'm not very healthy, and I wasn't healthy when I started. I'm not healthy now, so big whoop. And it's probably got the loneliest job on the planet on top of that. And I'm one of the most hated people on the planet on top of that. It's all fine. That comes with the territory. I got no issues with it. We're losing all the species because of it. And so somebody has to tell the story. And they took down my site with 24,000 plus subscribers a few weeks ago, while I was 450 kilometers away in the woods, in the middle of nowhere. They took down my site. And I was shown there was an extinction event here on the East Coast. I'm doing everything I can, right? I am. I'm doing everything I can. I can't keep up with it all. And when things break down, game over for Dana, right? I still haven't even got the boat operating, for God's sakes. I got an old engine that's been to Alaska 6 times, for goodness sakes. It's not fair. When you look at it, that's not fair. I should have a brand new engine. In fact, I should have 2 brand new engines each year pulled off and put back on another new set of engines. Because it's not safe out there on the ocean as it is, you know? But we got to get the work done. So all I can say is, look, I don't always succeed, but I always do the best I can with what I got. And calling it humble doesn't do it justice. And it's simply not fair when you see Greenpeace's, they just throw millions of dollars every month at Greenpeace, and Greenpeace is the control opposition. That's the same for like Arnie Gunnarsson and the rest of these people. They throw money at them, but their job is to deceive you, manipulate you, and draw you away from people like me. And I know I can be pretty colorful sometimes. I get that. But that's because I'm a real person, and I go through these experiences and these heartbreaks where I see the world being exterminated and all the species, and it affects me that way. And it shows up emotionally sometimes. I probably shouldn't do it. But that is, I can't pretend it doesn't. It's supposed to affect me. It's supposed to affect you. It doesn't affect them because they don't have those types of attributes. But there should be, there really should be at least one person out there who's honest. Now just hang tight for a second. I got to check something. And if I can't find it, I'm going to make a quick phone call for us to find out what's going on. It takes me a second. Are you getting clicks on your end? I haven't seen Kevin Blanche put up a video in over a week. He's got a video up. 1, 2, 3. 3 videos. Let's give him a call and get an update from him because we haven't heard from him for a week. Let's call Kevin Blanche and see if we can get him to give us a quick update. Where you to, Kevin? I got you here somewhere. Kevin B. That would be Kevin.
Gonna catch a cold from that ice inside your soul. Kevin B. Blanche, the Post-Ignorance Project.
Hi, Kevin. It's
Send
Dana.
a message. I'll get right back.
That's okay. He'll see my name on his phone anyway. But he's got 3 videos up, so I'm assuming he's back at it. We haven't seen anything for a whole week from him. That's not normal. I was worried about him. So that's good, as long as he's visibly doing something, right? He was on the chat? Okay. That's why he didn't answer the phone. Okay, Warren, I hears you. Yeah, I didn't see Kevin. I just scroll back up through the chat room. I don't see him, don't see him, don't see him, don't see him. Christian, Jake, Jen. Yeah, I don't see him in the chat room. Oh, there he is. Good stuff. Yeah, I was getting worried. And when I seen he wasn't there. Yeah, he was in here earlier. I see that now. I just seen him. Okay. You got a strike for hate speech. Wow. YouTube kettled him, yeah. I have to call him tomorrow night. We'll call him on the tomorrow night show, see what happened. He got a strike. That's horrible news. That must have killed him, man, not being able to post for a whole week. I knows what it does to me. I'm going around cursing for the first 24 hours. Yeah, they do that hate speeches. That's just because he's hitting a hammer or a nail right on the head, right? So we better start raising money is all I can say. We're burning it at this stage. Whatever. Who cares? The main thing is the show continues to grow and the research continues, right? That's the most important thing. Yeah, I'm on BitChute, but BitChute only gives me 40 views on a video. Good night, everybody. Warren, Nirad, Anna, Lori, I only serve one king. James Lucid, Dana Nasana, Steve White. I'll just scoot up through the names. Revelation, Barks and Meows. James Megan. Good night, everybody. I'll just scoot up through name. Good night to everybody else who's watching or joining us and watching this later and tonight and tomorrow. Your numbers are my numbers are censored. I don't pay no attention to it. Christian. I'm just scrolling up through the comments, make sure I shout out to a few people. It always gets me to switch off, right? I enjoy saying hi to you folks. You took the time out to join me. Kevin Blanche. Yeah, we'll call Kevin tomorrow night, hopefully. Scott. I'm pretty burnt out. It's been a long day for me. It's going to be a long day tomorrow. I'm looking forward to getting that plywood up tomorrow. Colette. Thank you, honey. Love you too, sweetie. Bless you all, folks. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Oh, Kevin's calling back in. Hi, Kevin.
What's up, Dana?
I'm going to put you up live here. the show's just closing, but I'm going to put you up live here. You can tell everybody what happened to your channel last week.
Oh, okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, your number come up scam likely. So I didn't answer it. It said scam likely, so they got us A to Z.
Put Dana Durnford on it after, so you know it's me next time.
I will.
Hey, I called you because you didn't post any videos this week, right?
Yeah, they got a strike against me.
Bastards, man.
So they got their new set of rules. They came out in 2019 in their so-called community guideline police, and they're tagging everybody out for no reason. I mean, I didn't do anything that I don't ever do differently, and they just so I haven't had a copyright strike in 12 years, never.
Right,
I don't
wow.
want to violate any rules or laws.
Wow.
And so they gave me a copyright strike and took, blocked your posting for a week. So, I mean, we're just up against it. I mean, it's just, first they kettled everybody. I mean, that's why our view count started to crash 3 years ago. That was their strategy.
Yeah.
The nuclear energy have control. Look who the biggest shareholder of Google is.
Yeah.
It's the Saudi royal family.
And they're pro-nuclear too, right?
Oh, boy. And so they own nuclear reactors.
Yeah.
Google owns San Onofre. They own Diablo Canyon.
That's right.
And so you can't say boo. So I don't really know what we're going to do. I mean, they got us.
They got no one to pick on, really. They got you and me and a couple more. That's it. They really don't have anybody to pick on, right?
Well, what they did to you, I'll tell you why what they did to you is illegal.
Yeah.
Under their own conduct. They'll tell you, we're a private company. We're a private company,
That's
so
right,
we don't have to meet the First Amendment of the United States. But, okay, you're a private company. We have a contract with you. I had a contract with them. I signed a contract with them when I opened my YouTube in 2008, 2009. So they changed the rules. Okay. They made us sign a new contract in 2019. That's what they'll tell you. Okay. So they took your whole catalog down.
Yeah.
So those videos they let stand for all those years under the old contract, now that's against the law. That's a violation of contract law. So they took down, they're burning entire libraries down now. They're not just messing around with burning a book.
They said
that this is any different than...
They said you can't talk about 911 and you're not allowed to talk about the World Health Organization. And so soon...
You're not allowed to talk about anything.
Like, really, I've never heard tell of anything like that. You're not allowed to have a debate about the World Health Organization or 911. That truly is Orwellian as it gets, right?
Oh, it's worse than Orwellian. I mean, you think about it. You go back to Google in Germany in the 1930s.
Yeah.
When they were doing this, when they were burning the books libraries, people think this is any different. They're crazy. It's not
right.
different.
That's what I thought of too, Kevin, when it happened. I said, my
they're burning
goodness.
whole libraries down.
Yeah. And I had a big one.
I call them,
I had a big one, right?
I call them, well, it's outrageous. I mean, the historical catalog work that's there, it's like going into Harvard's research library, Weber State's research library, and taking 10 years of anti-nuclear work and just taking it out, putting it in a pile, and setting it on fire. That's what they did.
Yep.
It's against the law.
Yep. No, I agree.
I read the other day that Google's getting 200 lawsuits a day against them. A day.
It actually felt like I got murdered when they took down my site because that had all the expeditions. It had decade of research. It was really...
Yeah,
it still makes me angry.
Work.
Yeah, it still makes me angry, They're lucky I can't get a hands on any of them.
So the thing is that's what we need our work backed up, and I've begged and screamed for somebody out there to come with us, somebody IT, and help us get it backed up, but they won't.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
We can't get anybody. We can't get a lawyer. We can't get an IT. We can't get a publicist. We can't get nobody.
No, it's ridiculous.
Which is blowing my mind.
It just doesn't
matter on the face of the earth, and we got nobody.
It's like we got picked up and zapped to another planet, and we don't know it, and we don't know that it happened to us, right? Really something,
We're living in a whole freaking another world now. It's so repressive, it's unbelievable.
Hey,
they can just randomly destroy whole freaking catalogs.
I don't know, man. I'm glad you're back. I'm glad you're back anyway. I was worried. I wasn't sure what had happened. I thought there might have been a strike, but
for a week.
You really only post your own material. I didn't think they would be able to give you a strike, see? But they done it through that.
They gave me a strike because they said for hate speech.
Yeah, hate speech is.
I think it's because.
It's just a way of shutting you down.
I used the word Zionist. I think they didn't like the word Zionist.
And they don't tell you either what hate speech was, right?
No, it's just, that's what's crazy about it. It's just all freaking random. Somebody, a computer picking something up, and then somebody just, some low lot in, who knows, who's watching it, whether it be a CIA, I don't know who they actually physically say they have to screen them, and they just decide, okay, boop, bang, bang.
I remember last year they took down 30 videos at the one time on my site. Never said nothing to me. They just sent me a notice for each video.
Have you had multiple strikes?
No.
So you haven't even had any strikes?
No strikes. No. No emails. No nothing, man. No idea what happened.
And they just deleted your entire channel.
And then I contact.
Tell you why?
No, nothing. I tried to contact them. No reply. Okay, listen, it's the end of the show. I'm glad to hear you back.
All right.
Feel free to call. Free to call in anytime, Kevin. You know that, right?
All right, I will. All right.
Okay. God bless, my son. Hugs for you. We'll see you later, Kevin. Put my name in your phone so you can get me next time. Awesome. That's good to hear he's back, but it's horrifying that he got a strike on his channel. Okay, well, there you go. We made it through. We got 30 strikes, 30 thumbs up, and 83 playbacks. So you notice my videos are censored. And another worrying thing is 12 hours from now, my video will be 10 seconds longer than it is after the show. Every video... not the first 10 videos, but every video after that, they've done that to my videos. 12 hours later, you can't download it with any app for 12 hours. And at 12 hours, it'll show up on the front page. It's not on the front page for 12 hours. And when it shows up, it's 10 seconds longer. I don't know what they're up to, but it's not good. God bless everybody. Hugs for everybody. We'll be back tomorrow night. I'll see everybody tomorrow night. Hugs for everyone. God bless.